Hello again, Strict. Diablo Force open beta tests are so close, and I've already made a lot of pre-launch Theorycrafted semi-builds that should be good for fresh into endgame characters when the game launches. Stressing on when the game launches, but it could still help you in the beta by giving you hints regarding which skills go well together with which ultimate and so on. This is the last build I would make before the beta, at least before the first beta, and after that I also plan to evolve those setups into fully fledged builds when the game is actually launched and I have information about socket slots on each item, different types of sockets and their bonuses, such as ascended items such as paragons and so on. All the information that I'm missing. For now, hopefully those setups are enough to give you an idea to use them as a skeleton. This is one such build for the Barbarian Class called Juggler, and as the name suggests, it will be juggling between one weapon and another, constantly swapping. A little bit of information about the beta though. We'll only be able to reach level 25 and only play in the first act/zone called Fractured Peaks, so again, those builds more useful for the actual game on launch, ideally for like characters over level 50, that maybe have some renown levels as well, and that's why I've used around 63 points for those builds, no more than 70, because people told me that in the closed beta, the limit of skill points you could get from leveling and from renown was around 63, 65 or whatever. So I tried not to go too high from that number in all those setups I've made. So you can use them as a skeleton jump starter, for your post-story end game grinding, and you can build up upon those with the if you get any extra points over level over 63 65 skill points. A little bit about my spreadsheets that I've used to make those builds. I have two of them. One of them is the full skill trees with talent points and active skills and passive skills and whatever, that you could use kind of as a semi-build calculator, and to just give you an idea of what to expect for each class. And then I've used that one to make the other set of spreadsheets where each separate build has its own separate spreadsheet with only the active skills I have used. Sometimes I have added a couple more active skills as alternatives to what you can do, and with passive skills that I think fit well with the build. Even if I haven't put points into them, I've added some passives that I think could be good to consider if you have extra skill points, or if you want to mess around with it and move points from one passive to another and so on. So hopefully it's clear. Hopefully you enjoy those spreadsheets. Links in the description to both of them. Now buckle up and let's go with the actual build. Since this is the final such video, that would mean I would have 4 builds for every class, 4 options, and I try to make them different. I try to take a different specialization, capstone, whatever you want to call it, final big massive passive. And Walking Arsenal was the one I didn't have a build for already. I have one with Unconstrained, with Unbridled Rage and Gushing Wounds. Now, Walking Arsenal was the one I didn't have one with, and the Juggler is one such setup. Dealing direct damage with a two-handed bludgeoning, two-handed slashing, or dual-wielded weapons grants 10% multiplicative increased damage for 6 seconds. While all 3 damage bonuses are active, you gain an additional 15% multiplicative increased damage. So building around this, with this in mind, I've been picking the rest of the stuff. That's how I make the builds. I pick this one first, next the ultimate, and now that I have those, I consider the synergies there. Iron Maelstrom is the ultimate I picked. Activate to attach a chain to your two-handed bludgeoning weapon and slam the ground, dealing damage and stunning for 2 seconds. Reactivate a second time to attack a chain, to attach, not attack, attach a chain to your two-handed slashing weapon, and swipe it in front of you, dealing damage and bleeding damage. Reactivate it a final time to attach a chain to your dual-wield weapons and swing them around you, dealing damage per hit. And this requires a full arsenal of weapons. The arsenal is a system for the barbarian where they can have 2 two-handed weapons and a dual-wielding setup. So that's what they mean a full arsenal. You need to have a two-handed weapon, 1 two-handed weapon, 2, ideally 1 bludgeoning, 1 slashing, two-handed, and a dual-wielding combo of man-hand, off-hand. Then Maelstrom gets increased crit strike chance 10% and deals 20% increased multiplicative crit strike damage all the time when used. And dealing direct damage to an enemy after swapping weapons reduces Iron Maelstrom's cooldown by 1 second. So the more you swap, the sooner you will be able to reuse this beauty of a skill. I wonder how it would look in an animation. Probably amazing. Now there's some passives for two-handed weapons to consider. While using two-handed weapons, you get extra crit strike damage. If this is 5% per point, definitely great. If you put points into WoW or heavy-handed, you unlock brute force. That's why it's done in such a way. It's a weird skill. But I've had information that both of those skills can unlock this one. You don't need both of them, you need just one of them. If you put points into WoW, you can also put points into concussion. I've only put points here because I thought rather than putting points into those three, there's other places to put them. Tempered Fury, I've only put 1 point just so I can unlock Invigorating Fury and Furious Impulse. I think Furious Impulse is nice to get more Fury, to get more spammy. But I had a little bit of extra points left and I decided, okay, let's put those 2 points into Invigorating Fury for a little bit of healing for each 100 Fury spent. You might want to remove this if you don't need the healing, and that's fine. And if you don't need the Fury, remove this and that. And that's 6 points you could maybe put here and here 3 or elsewhere. This one, you don't need it because you won't be causing bleeding much. I left it just like that in case you want it. Thick Skin, if you need survivability, this is not bad either. But again, I thought it's better to put the points into places like Pit Fighter. For example, 1 point here to unlock this one, point here to unlock that one. And now if you want to max this one out, again, you can sacrifice some things, max it out. Dealing direct damage with Weapon Mastery skill, which in our case is Steel Grasp, causes your next core skill to make enemies vulnerable. And our core skill is Hammer of the Ancients, the Hota. Steel Grasp, one of my favorite skills alongside Ground Stomp. Sucky, pull the enemies in, make them vulnerable at the same time. And this one would stack probably with that one, but if you think you don't need that because you have that, that's fine. Now, if Steel Grasp damages an enemy, gain Berserking. I think we can gain Berserking from other places. That's why I added an additional charge. If you think you're not getting enough Berserking, remove that one charge to Steel Grasp and do that one here. Now, this move brings us to Leap. Good for escaping. Alternative would be Charge, but I love Leap more. And you'll see why. If Leap doesn't damage an enemy, first of all, this knocks back enemies, by the way. If it doesn't damage an enemy, its cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds from 17 to 13. And if Leap damages at least one enemy, gain Fury, which is good to keep that Fury going. I'd rather take that than the Swow. This one, we don't have Shouts, so we don't need that one here. And then Aggressive Resistance. Gain damage reduction while berserking, which leads to Battle Frenzy when a brawling skill, in our case Leap, damages at least one enemy, gain berserking for 1 second. So pretty solid. In case you don't get this, at least you'll be getting that. And this is additional, but I didn't invest points into it. This one, again, I didn't invest points into it. Ground Stomp, another one of my favorite skills, as I said, deals damage to nearby enemies and stuns them for 3 seconds, whopping 3 seconds on a 16-second cooldown. And this increases the stomp duration by 1 second, so a 4-second stun. And Ground Stomp generates 25 Fury. If you need it, take it, but I'd rather take this. Reduce the cooldown of your ultimate skill by 1 second for each enemy damaged by Ground Stomp. So, start with Steel Grasp. Get them closer. Ground Stomp. Reduce the cooldown of the ultimate if you need to. And this, you also get reduced damage by swapping. So ideally you would put different weapons on each thing. This is your dual wield. This is your burgeoning. You can put either Ground Stomp or Leap as a swashing weapon. You need one of those two, or Steel Grasp. So you have those 3 skills. One of them needs to be Steel Grasp. And ideally, this one and that one won't be the same one. So if this one is swashing, maybe put this one again as burgeoning or the other way around. and maybe put this one as a dual wielding again or something like that. You have to figure out which one fits with what one, but I really recommend this one for this build. Now, imposing presence, extra life, leading to damage reduction against elites, bosses, and even players, mind you. And the only passive in the game that gives you damage reduction to players on a barbarian as well. Now, Hammer of the Ancients, lovely skill from the looks of it. Slam your hammer down with the Fury of the Ancients, dealing damage to a concentrated area. Gain 10 Fury when the Hammer of the Ancients damages 2 or more enemies. Again, you have to pull them in so you can get to hit more than one enemy. Gain Berserking for 2 seconds when hitting 2 or more enemies with Hammer of the Ancients. Again, pretty solid. Again, must be burgeoning. And this gain 10 Fury when Hammer of the Ancients damages 2 or more enemies. Cost 35, you gain 10 back. This thing here, it's actually this thing there. And this thing here is actually this thing there. You won't get those bonuses unless you invest into them. And I prefer this over that. I prefer this over the after 8 crit strikes to overpower with the next one. Pressure point, not so bad. It will make Hammer of the Ancients have 10% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds, but only 10% chance. Sure, it applies on each hit, on each enemy separately in that chance, but I'd rather take something else. And Frenzy. Frenzy is our dual wielded stuff. This build is all about attack speed. The better your attack speed, the more hits per second, the more swapping, the more everything would be. Yeah, I think that's all about attack speed, fury generation, and reducing the cooldown of that ultimate as much as possible. Is how it goes. So, dealing damage with frenzy increases frenzy's attack speed by 20% for 3 seconds up to 60%. While it has those 60%, it also generates 1 additional fury instead of 5, 6. And you gain multiplicative damage reduction for each stack of frenzy you currently have. So those 3 stacks, 3 times 8%. I'd rather take this than that. And I hope this is clear. Let's move on to the aspects. For each of those Theorycraft builds, I like to start with explaining quickly what legendary aspects are and how they work. You can skip ahead 1 or 2 minutes while I'm explaining that if you already know. Legendary aspects are special affixes that come with legendary items. So you kill an enemy, you loot a chest or something else that gives you loot, there's a chance for that loot to be legendary and for it to have a legendary aspect. If it's legendary, obviously it has legendary aspect on it, which is special affix, build around me kind of affix that you can take from one item, put it on another item. You can take it from a legendary, put it on another legendary, replacing what it has with what you give it. Or you can take it from a legendary, put it on a rare item, making that rare item adopt this aspect and become a legendary itself. Now that this is clear, there is a catch though. You can only do that with items from the same category, which is offensive, defensive, mobility, utility, resource. So those 5 categories, take an item from one category, put it on another item of the same category. Amulet is in all categories and is 50% effectiveness. Two-handed weapons, 100% effectiveness, only goes on offensive. And keep that in mind, because the Barbarian has 2 two-handed weapons and it gets the bonuses of the aspects. Even while dual wielding, it gets the bonuses of the two-handed and it gets the bonuses of the dual wielding even when it is using one of the two-handed. So all of those bonuses you get all the time with the Barbarian, whereas with the other heroes, if I'm not mistaken, you only get the one that you're visually seeing your character wearing. But with the Barbarian, it's different thanks to the arsenal system. Now, there is a second way to get the legendary aspects, and that's from finishing a dungeon, specific dungeon. So, you go to a certain area, you beat the final boss of the area. For example, in Fracture Peaks, the Defiled Catacomb, you finish it, you beat the boss, and that will reward you aspect of tempering blows to Codex of Power, which is a user interface. In that user interface, you have collection of aspects that you've obtained this way. But there is a catch. Those aspects give you the bare minimum stats in terms of aspect. And the rest of the stats will be fine, but this will always be the minimum. For example, Quickening Pulse always will give you the 40% chance versus 45, 46, 50 or whatever the maximum would be. So keep that in mind. there is the catch. So you go to the aspect NPC, you click on the source from where to take the aspect, you click Codex, you select the power and from the Codex, and you can still put it on other items, but it will be the bare minimum row. Now that this is clear, let's quickly tell you what goes into which SWAT. Helmet, aspect of the Relentless Arms Master. Aspect of Tempering Bows on the chest, Relentless Berserker gloves on pants, bow, catus, Shared Misery on the boots rather than using Ghost Walker or Wind Striker because we have a leap, so no need of those. Retribution Amulet, Umbro, Ring 1, Unrelenting Fury, Ring 2. One-hand weapon, Wind Striker, off-hand Ancestral Echoes, two-handed number 1 Ancestral Force, two-handed number 2 Veteran Brawler. Now quickly go through all of them so you know what they do, what they give. Let's go through Relentless Master first, the resource one. Gain multi increase Fury generation while all damage bonuses from Walking Arsenal are active, which is our this one, the specialization, the Capstone. Very good synergy for that build around me kind of thing. This one, killing an enemy with a core skill refunds percent of its base fury cost. Core skill is Hammer of the Ancients again, and since it gets this one back as well, it's lovely to keep getting extra fury. Can only happen once per skill cast though. And Umbro, I love Umbro, especially with Shared Misery, that's why I like to talk about them one after the other. Restore resource when you crowd control an enemy, and then this one, Lucky Strike, when you hit a crowd controlled enemy, there's X% chance that crowd control effect spreads to another unaffected nearby enemy. Which brings us to Relentless Berserker aspect, the other utility. Damaging an enemy with a core skill, Hammer of the Ancients in our case, has chance to extend the duration of berserking by 1 second, and it's double if it was a critical strike. And that brings us to Tempering Bows and Bukatus, which are the defensive ones I took. Bukatus, Leap creates an earthquake that deals physical damage over 4 seconds. While standing in earthquake, in the earthquakes, you gain increased damage reduction. And this one, after swapping weapons 6 times, gain Fortify. Which is interesting because that brings me to another thing that gives us Fortify, that gives us attack speed when swapping 6 times. This one, after swapping weapons 6 times, gain increased attack speed for 4 seconds, which is the Wind Striker I put over here. Let's talk about Ancestral Echoes and Ancestral Force as well. Hammer of the Ancient quakes outwards, dealing X% of its damage to enemies, which is pretty solid. And this one, Ancestral Echoes, which is in the offhand, damaging an enemy with Leap, Upheaval, or Whirlwind. In our case, we have Leap. Has up to X% chance to summon an ancient to perform the same skill. Can only happen once every 5 seconds. So the ancient will perform Leap, and hopefully performing Leap will benefit from this earthquake. Hopefully that Leap will be boosted. I'm not sure how it works, but if I was a developer, I would have done it that way for people to think about that level 2 synergy, level 2 depth of the synergy. And then the last one we have is the Veteran from the class specific. Then we'll go to the other ones. Each time a core skill deals direct damage to an enemy, your next charge or leap, we have leap, we don't have charge, deals increased damage. So yeah, when Hammer of the Ancient does damage, boom, you boost your leap. And this brings me to Retribution. Retribution and Pummeling. They're good synergy, especially with Ground Stomp, but we don't have room for all of them, so I only took the Retribution because it's additive 30% increased damage to stunt, and it also gives chance to stun distant enemies. On a melee barbarian build, it's good. Pummeling is not bad as well. Multiplicative increased damage to stunt, knockdown, and frozen. You don't have much knockdown or frozen, but you have knockback and stun, and this one definitely works great. It's recommended. You don't have to take it. You can take something else, but I definitely would take that one. But alternatively, there is pretty good thing with this one. When you hit, when you inflict bleeding on elites, you can reduce the cooldown of your ultimates, which synergizes very well. But you would only be inflicting bleeding with Maelstrom, and that would require you sacrificing either Ground Stomp or Leap or even Hammer of the Ancients, but I wouldn't sacrifice Hammer of the Ancients. So probably sacrificing Ground Stomp or Steel Grasp to get some bleeding. What choices do you have? First of all, you have this choice here. Steel Grasp could be replaced with Rupture, and that's pretty much it, because Leap, there is no bleeding skill here. Ground Stomp, no bleeding skill here, and I wouldn't replace Hammer of the Ancients. You could replace Frenzy, but then you would have to pick another dual wielding setup. This would require a swashing weapon. You would have to pick dual wielding on the Leap or the other ones. That's just some options. I hope everything's clear. If you have questions, ask in the comment section. To get notified when I upload more content like this one or other builds and guides for Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on notifications. As well as keep in mind there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets you be a paying member for my channel to get access to perks such as emotes and badges made by me, as well as the option to get one-on-one tutoring for the very basics of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere and After Effects. And memberships can be cancelled at any time if you no longer want to be a member. Thanks for watching all the way until the end. Struck up, keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.